leadership in quantum is ours to lose. And so we are the most appropriate environment to be world leaders in the quantum ecosystem. We want to keep what we have and make it bigger and better and make sure that the rest of the world knows that Colorado is the epicenter of quantum and the epicenter of a lot of advanced industries.
Since 2018, the United States has had a national strategy for excellence in quantum information science that includes getting the science right, enhancing competitiveness, and enabling people. To achieve that aim, regions across the country have begun ramping up their efforts to become quantum Silicon Valleys. Find out how Colorado stacks up in advancing the quantum stack in this episode of the Post-Quantum World. I'm your host, Konstantinos Karagiannis. I lead quantum computing services at Protiviti, where we're helping companies prepare for the benefits and threats of this exploding field. I hope you'll join each episode as we explore the technology and business impacts of this post-quantum era. Our guest today is the Director of Global Business Development at Colorado's Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Michelle Hadwiger, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so traditionally we cover a lot of Chicago companies on the show because we're part of the Chicago Quantum Exchange. But Colorado companies have been on quite a bit. Actually, we've had Cold Quanta, who went on to become Inflection. We've had on Atom and Quantinuum, who have a presence there. We've even had on the Colorado School of Mines. So we're pretty well aware of what's going on in the area. I just wanted to spread the love a little bit and have you come on to talk a little bit about Colorado becoming a hub and quantum and what that means. And so to orient our listeners a little bit, you work for Colorado state government in OEDIT, right? I mean, if I could call it that, OEDIT.
Yeah, my job is principally, to work with companies on relocation, attraction, retention, and develop ecosystems that can help provide investment and jobs within the state of Colorado.
Okay. So when it comes to quantum, why Colorado? I mean, you can joke that, hey, there's mountains and they're cold and that's great for quantum computing, but that's like saying you should launch a mission to Mars from a mountain because you'll be closer to Mars. I mean, it's not really a noticeable, march towards the number you need as far as temperature in this case. So what is it about Colorado that makes it such a great place to have some quantum magic happening?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of legacy investments and or happenstance that made Colorado an appropriate environment to accelerate what we were already doing within the quantum ecosystem. You've got the National Institute of Standard and Technology in Boulder that's, a key player in building the fundamental quantum computing blocks and the 2-qubit logic gate. And then you've got a number of physicists in Colorado, 4 of them that have earned Nobel Prizes in quantum and have been doing research in the quantum area that has attracted additional talent and research and development opportunities. To name a few, things that they've been working on, the atomic clock, and Professor Jun Yi is a huge attraction for folks looking to enter the Colorado market. But one of the things that I think is quite unique about the Colorado quantum ecosystem is that it does have opportunities for many of the different modalities within quantum. So, the computing, sensing, communication side of things, and then also different companies that are working on different computing strategies. So you've got the trapped ion computing strategy, and then the alternate. So I think that for folks looking to enter the quantum ecosystem, Colorado has been building on this research and development capabilities and has built a good basis for what happens next within quantum.
Yeah, that's a great point. It almost feels like the seeds were planted way before anyone even was thinking of quantum computing kind of in the area. So it's definitely a good region to highlight. So can you elaborate a little bit on what Elevate Quantum is and how that fits into all of this?
Sure. So Elevate Quantum was a consortia that was developed to access the industrial policy of the federal government's federal funding provision within the CHIPS and Science Act that had dedicated funding opportunities to identify ecosystems that had the opportunity to create an outsized ROI for a federal investment. So, for example, if you already had the density or cluster or share of employment and or companies and or opportunity to create an ecosystem with an enabling technology that could have a great return for the federal government's investment, then they were willing to distribute funding for that purpose. So for Colorado, the Elevate Quantum team did submit a funding request for Colorado's capabilities within quantum. I know Chicago and Illinois and Chicago, respectively, with J.B. Pritzker, had also submitted an application to focus on quantum. And for Colorado, our value proposition was just much greater. So the consortia includes the private sector, so private companies working within the quantum space. It also includes the federal labs, the JILAs of the world, or institutes, the NISTs of the world, as well as academia and the tier one research institutions. So it brought together all of these stakeholders and identified a coalition of the willing to talk about what our quantum ecosystem look like, and then also leverage some research capabilities of the Boston Consulting Group to really identify why Colorado's strengths and competitive advantages in certain areas of the quantum realm were more prominent and easier to accelerate the use of federal funding vis-a-vis another market.
So all this led to a bit of federal money coming Colorado's way, right? So that was, I guess, $40.5 million awarded. So can you talk a little bit about that and what that does for the region, and also how that money was almost doubled by Governor Polis? So if you could talk a little bit about that and what that does for the region.
Yeah, so it's hard to say now because it's so early on. They did receive the $40.5 million through the EDA, but it's hard to say now what the funding designation will do. I can say what it's intended to do is, we already have the most organizations, the most companies, and the most jobs of any ecosystem. But it does have 120 members and includes other states as well. New Mexico and Wyoming's capabilities will be leveraged in addition. But we're looking at building kind of a collaborative infrastructure, shared infrastructure, open access labs, accelerator programs, workforce development programs, and ways to advance our ecosystem that already exists today. And then the state did come in with companion legislation to help with this investment opportunity by creating tax credit programs on the infrastructure side. So the universities have an interest in developing accelerators and incubators. In this case, the legislation created a mechanism for those universities to take down tax credits in order to support the capital investment that they will be putting into these facilities. So Colorado School of Mines and CU Boulder will be accessing these funding mechanisms or schemes, tax credits for different purposes. They'll apply for these credits and then execute against their strategy for building an accelerator or a fab to lab or a lab to fab facility in one location, and then more of an incubator opportunity in another location. So one of the tax credits is designed directly to offset the capital construction of equipment, business personal property for the equipment that'll go into those facilities. And then the other scheme that the governor's team came up with in terms of financing was a quantum loan loss reserve program, which is unlike any other financing program in the country, maybe in the world, for quantum companies, which unlocks resources from institutions to provide capital for companies in the quantum space, and then secures any loss that they might have as a result of that investment in an enabling technology that does have inherent risks and a higher capital, barrier of entry, if you will, to develop companies.
Yeah, because quantum investing has always been a bit tricky. It's been the VC game, and everyone wondering what's going to happen. And like when these people always ask me, which companies do I invest in? I'm like, well, there's, I don't know, like 3. So I don't know, pick them. There aren't that many stocks out there for a reason. But this is great. It sounds like it'll open the doors to a lot of companies developing. And it sounds like Polis and Pritzker, I guess both governors are very pro, bringing quantum to their states. And it's political season and all that. And we're obviously not a political show. But on the presidential debate we had a few days ago at the time of taping, Kamala Harris just slipped in a quantum reference. I don't know if you heard that. She's just like, we got a lead in quantum computing. It's like, whoa. And of course, Trump and Kamala, I mean, the Trump administration and the Biden administration, they both have done things for quantum historically. So do you have any insights into what might be coming down the pike from each side of the aisle? Has there been any telegraphing to state governments like about what would possibly be expected?
I don't have a lot of insight into what the federal government might be alluding to in terms of additional investment in quantum or more investment in the quantum space. I do know that I think there are becoming further use cases and further identification of how quantum is a national security, is a technology that could benefit and or protect national security. And I do think that that'll become increasingly important. I do think we often think of ourselves competing with the rest of the US, but we are really competing with the world. This is almost like the space race. I think that the quantum race to identify who becomes a leader in this is not just us against the US, it's us against the world. And the world is looking to the US to be a leader in this space. And they're looking at our technology and what we're developing and our capabilities and trying to replicate that in their own ecosystem. So I do think, for the cybersecurity and kind of data encryption and some of the things that quantum applications are able to address in the pharmaceuticals and biotechnology and within aerospace and defense are becoming increasingly important global issues. And the first mover in that space, I think, will have a huge impact on the economy of quantum, if you will. And I think the federal government will pay attention to that. So all that to say, I don't really know what will happen, but I do think there's a lot of implications on the national security side that quantum could solve for.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the that whole us versus the world kind of approach, because now the new government exports and the controls on export rather have been put into place. And it just reminds them of the old crypto wars. It's like, oh, you can't send cryptography technology, software, gear, whatever overseas. And we're kind of in the same place again. And I was wondering if we really could even put that quantum information science genie back in the bottle, by not sending one refrigerating technology to China. Is that really going to slow them down in quantum computing? I don't think so personally. But yeah, it's more, we should be definitely focusing on building our strengths here and win that way. I agree. So what do you think the projected economic impacts of making Colorado a global hub would mean for quantum technology? I guess, and also what it mean for the region, really.
Sure. Again, hard to say, but I do think there's a lot of blue sky advantages that come from creating the ecosystem that are probably easier to talk about on the front end, meaning, we've already got the really STEM oriented or science, technology, engineering, and math and physics related PhD ecosystem. But I do think as the quantum field develops, we're going to realize that the expertise in areas of, the workforce that are lower skilled, middle skilled workers for, high precision machinists, welders, electricians, people who understand electronics. And in addition, something that probably doesn't get talked about a lot by the academics, but I think is really important, is more of the curious mind, the liberal arts student, the anthropologist that understands human behavior, understands a little bit more about motivation and things that underpin quantum from an accessibility perspective and the fundamentals of quantum, like thinking and how things work and how things are interconnected, why people act certain ways, like the neuroscience of left brain, right brain stuff. So I do think all of those different skill sets will come into play. And so the economics of focusing on some of those softer skills, I think will translate into a lot of opportunities, not only for quantum, but other industries that I think are sorely missing out on those core skill sets within companies and organizations to improve their top line, bottom line implications. But overall, it's hard to say, but I do think the economic impact will be great. I think it'll be a long tail because I do think it'll take a lot of initial investment in order to result in long-term investment, meaning we'll have a pretty large, I think, startup ecosystem, which means that they probably won't have profitability until 5 years or 6 years down the line. I'm not exactly sure how the business model of quantum will work, if it'll be similar to bioscience in terms of a longer return on your investment, or if it'll be more of an information technology return and come much earlier. So it's hard to say for me what the economic modeling would look like, but I do think we have opportunity to create a lot more firms, a lot more density in the ecosystem, and then again, round out our talent pool in Colorado for underrepresented talent in areas that are highly scientific and typically have been unaccessible or inaccessible to folks that are non-PhDs or physicists or science, technology, engineering, and math oriented.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about bringing companies in. Do you think then there's going to have to be a push more down on the individual level to bring in workforce? Encourage people with some kind of credits or relocation help or something, because there's that kind of, it's becoming an adage, right? Like for every 3 jobs in the quantum space, there's like 1 qualified candidate, that kind of thing. So you can imagine it's by region, like what do you do? So do you have any plans around that?
Yeah, I think there are, again, through the Elevate Quantum funding, I think that one of the focus areas is workforce development. More of the skills-based learning or apprenticeships or certificate stacking models of education will come into play a little bit more in that ecosystem than perhaps in others. And so I think that developing those new education models, and then also just shifting the perception and perspective from parents and learners that, you don't have to have a 4-year degree to do certain things. You also don't have to be a physicist or a PhD to play in this space. And then also just making quantum more of an accessible term. I don't know that I have a 14-year-old daughter, and if I said the word quantum, she would say, what is that? I have no idea what that is, and I have no interest in learning about that. But if you talk about quantum from the perspective of, LED light behaves with, a quantum, or solar panels behaves with, quantum in mind, or things that are more accessible to a learner that doesn't get the word quantum, I think the more we socialize the opportunities in real world applications of how quantum works from the use case perspective versus the science perspective, we will get a much more rounded out ecosystem and much more interest in the ecosystem overall. But right now, I think it's just an inaccessible kind of term and an inaccessible thing for people to understand. But we are competing with the world, and we are studying how other ecosystems are developing and performing throughout the world. We have a relationship with Finland. Taiwan has come to Colorado. The UK has a delegation coming in the next couple of weeks to study kind of what we've done. So Japan, we have a relationship with Japan and are working with them on some initiatives, and as well as the New Zealand, we are signing a memorandum of cooperation with New Zealand on some of these technology areas. So I do think you're going to see a lot more output in a short amount of time.
Wow. So you definitely had to read all the export controls carefully recently after signing
Honestly,
all those.
Not enough, but I do think there are a lot of questions around what qualifies for specific areas of technology. It's not as easy as the ITAR that's been in place for several years on the space side or something like that. This is a whole new ballgame where quantum is solving for problems we don't know exist yet, and for use cases we aren't aware of. And so I think it's going to be an iterative process for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier that I want to key in on. So you have a 14-year-old daughter. So that gets to mind 2 things here. One, are you doing anything to try and appeal to more diverse groups of students, potential members of the workforce in quantum? And 2, how young are you going after them? Are you planning on talking to grade school, high schools, whatever, about having some kind of programs there? Are you looking at universities to give them clear coder tracks? I think there should be a clear quantum coder major. Boom. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to develop quantum algorithms, and that's it. Just like we have. Are you guys doing anything in that space?
Yeah. So my office doesn't handle workforce, my team doesn't handle workforce or talent initiatives. We do have a whole department and division that handles that. And then the Elevate Quantum team is working on some workforce initiatives, which we are partners with and helping to inform, but I don't have an indication of where they're going to start in terms of primary schools or much further down the pipeline. I do think that it is important to start to socialize the opportunities in ways that are more marketable. We have examples of when the renewable energy sector was coming online, there were classes that were marketed as manufacturing classes, and nobody at the vocational level, and they were unsubscribed to. Essentially, no one signed up for the classes, and they couldn't fill the rooms. And then they changed the title to clean tech manufacturing or something, or clean tech, something with clean tech in the word. And then the class was oversubscribed when the solar and wind was coming online as an opportunity. And I just think it's depends on the way we talk about things to get kids or talent in pipelines. And so I think that'll be critically important as they start to socialize the talent opportunities. But I don't know where they'll start and at what level and what workforce initiatives that they have in mind. So I think that would be a question probably for the Elevate Quantum team.
Yeah, that's a great point, though, how they just changed the name and it attracted different folks. I would love to see something like that in quantum,
Yeah.
If they can get them excited, like this is going to be bigger than ChatGPT. I don't know, whatever it takes, and then get them in some form like that.
For AI is a huge buzzword. And so if quantum is playing in the AI space and kids are excited about AI because if they know ChatGPT and how that works, then I think that that's a way they could have an in as well.
Are you currently trying to woo more AI to the region too, in hopes of that synergy in the future?
Yeah, so that's tricky. I think we're focused on the deep tech ecosystem overall. There was recently some legislation passed in the state of Colorado to legislate AI that I think is in flux right now on how that works and how that translates to a company that might be operating in the AI space. So all that to say is I don't know how that will play out into either encouraging more AI in the state of Colorado or discouraging AI in the state of Colorado. But I do think, we are looking at AI and developing that ecosystem overall and seeing how that can help not only improve state government, but also be a really critical tool in applications for other private sector companies. So all that to say, we are focused on the deep tech market overall and are representing our value proposition for Colorado globally and domestically in these spaces. So I do anticipate that we'll see more investment. I think that the big tech companies will determine a lot of that. You've got the Amazons, the Microsofts, the IBMs of the world who still haven't quite really announced their quantum strategies or their AI strategies, in a public manner and what they're really investing in and at what sectors and what they're bullish on in terms of that. And so we do have all those big tech players in the market. So I think Colorado has a really big opportunity to capitalize on that. I just don't know that they fully are as public about where they're making their bets yet. But you see NVIDIA's stock go up and down, every day, and has had a really, really strong growth trajectory. And so I think that indicates that they're heads down making investments in R&D that do have AI and quantum computing in mind, based on the number of chips that are being sold for semiconductor space overall.
Yeah, the AI example with NVIDIA is interesting because those chips are going to need more and more and more and more power. So pretty soon, I think NVIDIA's stock's going to go up hand in hand with, the sale of nuclear reactors. I'm not sure how they're going to generate all the electricity for those things. But that said, quantum is a very low, despite refrigeration, a very low power draw technology. And is there kind of an energy focus in Colorado around quantum and what it might mean to have this come in as a big technology in the area?
I think it'll probably become increasingly important, sort of as you see, like how much power is required for a quantum computer to work. Sort of like when we got into crypto mining and things like that, and people are like, the energy usage is so high. Like, is that something we really want to do? I also think the amount of the vibration and temperature issues with some of the equipment that come into play with quantum are going to imply that there may need to be some energy considerations or something needs to be monitored in a way in terms of cooling and heating and keeping that temperature in place. But I think that's why Colorado has been a market for testing products in general, is because we don't have a lot of natural disasters. We don't have humidity. We don't have a lot of the other environmental considerations that are required for this, like precision environments, if you will. And so I think we're in a good position geographically and weather-wise for some of this product testing. But I do think Colorado has been a state that has been increasingly more focused on renewable energy and energy conservation and water usage and conserving water. So I think as these technologies develop, if they require more and more energy or some of our constrained resources, then it will be something we look at more closely. But as we know, not all quantum computers require dilution refrigeration, and so on and so forth. So I think that we'll be able to round out the ecosystem either way. But I do think environmental considerations will come into play.
Yeah, and really, quantum computers, when they're good, when they're really perfected, they're going to not take very much power at all, right? You'll be able to do in a millisecond what it might take a classical supercomputer a month to do. So, I mean, that's also worth mentioning. It might cost millions of dollars less to run, as far as like an electrical bill goes. So, if this area would become a new quantum Silicon Valley, if we're going to have a couple of those, let's say in the country or whatever. Have there been any lessons learned from how Silicon Valley formed that you've analyzed with your team to kind of like get to this place?
Yeah, we haven't analyzed anything directly other than to say that, again, one of the benefits of Colorado is that we've got such a diverse portfolio of really strong advanced industries. And so when you've got an ecosystem that's so diverse, the risk of economic shock is much less. And so Colorado's typically been one of those environments where the last state to enter a recession and the first to exit because of that diverse and balanced portfolio. And so when you get in a situation like Silicon Valley and you're doubling down on, one industry, Colorado had oil and gas in some parts of the state that was a problem for or something like that. But I do think when you are overly dependent on one area of expertise or a natural resource or a competency, then there is some inherent risk. But for Colorado, I don't think that's the case, because I do think we have such a diverse portfolio of industries, one in which where quantum enables all of the other things we're already really good at. So the adjacencies in photonics and lasers and, some of the quantum companies are doing methane detection, which is really appropriate for our oil and gas industry. And we've got the National Renewable Energy Lab and NIST and all these other players in the ecosystem where I don't think we'll ever end up in a situation where we're overly dependent on one thing. So what I would say about the Silicon Valley phenomenon is perhaps on the investor side, we would probably have some lessons learned on not having a Sand Hill Road situation, but having a good amount of funding mechanisms and schemes that operate at, all ends of the capital stack for, all the way from proof of concept all the way to venture capital, private equity, scale up. If we can figure out that roadmap for companies, I think that we'll have a better opportunity versus going after just a bunch of big funds that are looking to invest in these advanced technologies and spaces like the Silicon Valley model of Sand Hill Road. So I think if we can avoid that and then create an ecosystem that complements our investment environment with our research environment, with our commercialization plans, then Colorado will be the perfect storm of opportunity for companies.
Before we wind down, I know you don't speak for the governor, but if you could you somehow like summarize or characterize what Polis's vision is for quantum in Colorado? Like, is there some kind of like guiding principle he's sort of, letting water down into all the teams under him that are kind of all working towards this goal that maybe you could share?
Sure. I mean, I think the benefit of Governor Polis overall is that he is an entrepreneur. He has built companies and exited companies, and he understands the environment from both the practitioner level of having built companies and sold companies, as well as managing, government and how to accelerate these ecosystems and take advantage of leverage in terms of federal funding coupled with state funding and getting universities to work together and to collaborate. So I think his vision for Colorado is that the quantum leadership in quantum is ours to lose. And so we are the most appropriate environment to be world leaders in the quantum ecosystem. And I think that his message is very much like, we want to keep what we have and make it bigger and better and make sure that the rest of the world knows that Colorado is the epicenter of quantum and the epicenter of a lot of advanced industries. I think so. Getting more intentional and deliberate about our promotion of Colorado as one of these high-tech environments and high-tech states, because a lot of these international clients think of the coast still. They still think of New York, Florida, California, Texas, and a lot of them are skipping right over Colorado. And once they learn about Colorado, they're shocked to hear about what's happening and all of the density and talent and research and development capabilities that exist here. And so I think that that's something that we're working on doing a better job of, is promoting Colorado as a global player when the coasts typically get all the credit for that.
Yeah, and personally, I would like it if every single governor in the United States championed quantum. That would be wonderful for me, because I just want to see it grow and grow. I live in New York City. I live in Manhattan, and we don't exactly have a real quantum ecosystem here. It's more like use case focused. But yeah, I would like to see it championed more strongly all across the country. So thanks for giving us a slice into your particular part of that country. I really appreciate it, and good luck. I'd love to see more and more companies flourish in this space going forward.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now it's time for Coherence, the Quantum Executive Summary, where I take a moment to highlight some of the business impacts we discussed today, in case things got too nerdy at times. Let's recap. A few areas in the US make sense as quantum hubs, and Colorado has a lot going for it. NIST is there, along with 4 Nobel Prize-winning quantum physicists, and several companies that are working in all aspects of quantum computing and sensing. The Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, OEDIT, has been busy wooing even more companies and talent to come to the area. And in the summer of 2024, the area got a major boost. A consortium of 120 regional organizations called Elevate Quantum earned designated tech hub status, bringing $40 million from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. The state government under Governor Polis added $84 million on top. The hope is to create 10,000 new quantum jobs and raise billions in capital for the ecosystem by 2030. This will benefit Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming as a quantum silicon tri-state. Companies will enjoy tax credits, but universities like Colorado School of Mines and CU Boulder should also benefit from these programs, creating a synergistic environment of sharing talent and equipment. Workforce development in the region is expected to focus on all levels, from PhD down to more focused undergrad majors, such as quantum coding. Lessons learned from the renewable energy sector will be applied to getting students excited to explore some of these newer career paths. Because of Colorado's diverse portfolio of industries in the area, OEDIT also expects that customers for quantum advances will be plentiful. Governor Polis started as an entrepreneur and undoubtedly sees the opportunity quantum technology will bring to the area. As we strive to make the USA a global leader in QIS, we can't lose sight of all the fantastic benefits quantum computing can bring us here at home. That does it for this episode. Thanks to Michelle Hadwiger for joining to discuss making Colorado a quantum tech hub. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to Protiviti's The Post-Quantum World, and maybe leave a review to help others find us. Be sure to follow me on all socials at Constant Hacker, that's Constant with a K, Hacker. You'll find links there to what we're doing in quantum computing services at Protiviti. You can also DM me questions or suggestions for what you'd like to hear on the show. For more information on our quantum services, check out Protiviti.com or follow Protiviti Tech on Twitter and LinkedIn. Until next time, be kind and stay quantum curious.